So, I know it's been a while since I wrote a video. I just haven't really had a webcam, but I finally got into one, and I thought I would take this opportunity to cover a different book. I did get quite a bit of a response, and I got a lot of questions about Nietzsche's How to Philosophize with a Hammer. So I thought I would do another video since I've read so much of his work. So if anybody else is kind of confused about anything that you've read of his, feel free to drop me a message. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. So I thought in this one I would cover the Spoke Zarathustra. It really sums up a lot of what Nietzsche's entire philosophy kind of comes down to, and he touches on these huge ideas that are present in a lot of his works. So I thought I would run a little bit through his points and point out what I thought was most important to his philosophy. If you're confused about anything else in that text, I know it's a really long, kind of dense thing to read and a little confusing, and he does use a lot of metaphors, so if you're confused, again, I would be more than happy to help you through that. So in the beginning, the story is Zarathustra. He descends from his cave and he's trying to enlighten people of the Overman. And people don't respond well, some people are confused, some people end up going with him and trying to become this being that he's speaking about, but it's not all a good response overall. So the first question people might have is, what exactly is this Overman? I don't get it, so let me clear a little bit of that. The Overman is essentially someone that does not abide by these social constraints that we have, and kind of everything that we know, he will tear at it, break it apart, and then start from scratch, essentially. So he is taking he's essentially trying to develop his own ideas in a world where we're overrun and overconsumed by all these ideas that have already been presented to us. So essentially what he's going to do is he's going to take away morality, he's going to forget God and all these notions about good and evil, and he's going to try to develop his own ideas, essentially become his own free thinker, and he in turn ends up creating his own reality in his own universe, because again, he's the master and the creator of what he believes and his belief system and how things work and so on. So the next part of this book is Nietzsche famously says, God is dead and we have killed him, and I feel like so many people misquote him and they don't exactly get what this means, and let me make it very clear, this is not directly an atheistic quote. Rather, he's trying to explain and tell everybody that God is dead for the purpose of this notion of God, and religion is no longer enough to people, to themselves, and you can see this in society now. It's not enough to tell the truth about the universe and the world, and that is why the notion is dead to him. And he says it should be to everybody, so again, to attain this being of the Overman, to develop your own ideas, new thoughts, new way of thinking. Another thing that he mentions that's quite important is where he mentions the last man. He says essentially the last man is somebody that's what's going to be left in the world, and he's completely afraid that that's going to happen. And the last man is essentially worried, concerned with his own health, the well-being of himself, the well-being of others, overconsumed with work. He has little time for pleasure, and what little pleasure he has, he makes it up with notions like, well, I'm doing good for the community, or I'm doing good for myself, I'm happy, I'm content in doing what I'm doing. And Nietzsche says that these are all excuses, and these are all kind of, again, false notions to kind of conceal yourself from the actual reality of things. And he's trying to show you that, this is not the best way to live to him, and there's more to the world, and more that you can see, and more that you can find out and learn. The next part, he ends up going into the rope walker. He says man is a rope walker stretched between animal and the Superman, a rope over an abyss. So this is pretty important, because he's trying to show that what is great about man is that he is only a stretch away, so it's possible for him to attain the being of the Overman, but he's still essentially animalistic in his thinking, and we're still, stuck in that area. We're guided by our senses and our instinct, and we have these ideas of jealousy and all these other things that they seem animalistic. So he's trying to tell them that it's possible. And when he's showing, behind in the background, there's the image of a tight rope walker, sorry, and he's messed up his gig by the fool that is kind of mocking him or telling him to speed up. So that is kind of, it's an allegory of Nietzsche trying to tell the people, okay, this is how it can be done, and then he ends up failing because of the ridicule, and the people just don't believe it and don't see it. They don't understand how to reach this point. Another thing that he goes on to say is humans are kind of fragile, we're easily swayed, and we need to become overmen in order to tear that apart. Any notions that we have of good and evil, they need to be just abolished, and we need to start from scratch. Then there's the new idol chapter, and I think what is particularly telling here is he goes into the state and shows how the social constructs there and how it influences so much and how detrimental it is. Now, this is not a sort of like anarchy thing, or he does love chaos. That's a thing that Nietzsche loves, but the point is to kind of point out and show how the state, while it has a sense of, okay, let's do a democracy so the people are represented, it's kind of, he's trying to say that rather the state kind of makes you numb, and it will develop these notions of you should be good to your neighbor and you should be productive in society and do all these other things, but really it's kind of putting a veil over your eyes to prevent you from attaining being the overman and prevent you from thinking freely. Then I think one of the most important things that he touches on here is the will to power. This is a concept that is in pretty much almost everything he's ever, I don't want to, he's written a lot, but it's a huge idea in general. So the will to power, it can be a little confusing. It was confusing for me at first as well, but this is kind of the expression of the overman. It is the will that drives him to continue to attain this being and to become and stay the way he is. So this might be, for example, it doesn't always have to be negative, doesn't always have to be positive. I know that Nietzsche kind of blurs the lines between those two, and again, for that reason, to kind of show you need to tear these things apart and develop your own ideas away from what we already know. So essentially question these things. So I guess we can do an example of if your neighbor lies to you, and let's say they destroy your business or they ruin a big part of your life, it is in your best interest to do something that kind of is good for yourself that also puts something negative on him. Now, it could be through you not doing anything and upsetting him so much that you haven't taken action on his negative action. He gets off on that revenge kind of thing. But, so it could be in that essence. So just remember, essentially, the will to power is the overman's drive. Now, another huge part of his philosophy, which is huge not just for him, just for other writers as well, is the master-slave morality. He goes into it quite a bit here, and what this is, it's so they're poor and then they're rich, and he says the poor people, they create these notions, for example, of justice and injustice, and they want beliefs again like democracy, so they get representation and they feel like they have a say, and the powerful won't get too powerful under their leadership, essentially. And Nietzsche is saying, well, the poor, because of the oppressed and how, the repression they experience, they get so angry and resentful that they end up creating these ideas. And he's saying, so they're not good ideas either. And this is the master-slave morality. It's going to keep preventing people from being the overmen, and you're never going to reach your goal of, being a free thinker. I hope this kind of makes a little more sense now, and again, if you have any more questions about any part of the book, I have it. I can look it up online. I'll be more than happy to ask, so I hope this helps again.